नमस्ते, मेरे साथ शीतल जी। और ये हमारी और शीतल जी की तो हम लोग पहली बार एक तरह से अप्रैल मई में आए थे, कुछ खोजी यात्रा की तरह। और अच्छा ये लगा कि कम से कम वो सफल रहा। एक हम 10 लोगों को हम सब लोग आए, बात कहे। और कल शीतल जी का एक सेशन था जिसमें शीतल जी ना उसके बारे में बताए कौन
जी
कौन था, क्या मॉडरेट किया गया। और अच्छी बात
जी
ये थी कि अब हम लोग यहाँ काफी जगह हिंदी में भी बात कर रहे हैं। उस
जी
दिमाग के उसको हटा रहे हैं कि यहाँ केवल अंग्रेजी में ही बात हो सकती
जी अभय दुबे जी ने उसको मॉडरेट किया था। और एक रोहित त्रिवेदी है शायद,
है। त्रिपाठी जी,
त्रिपाठी। और एक नील साहब है जो यहाँ,
नील क्रिस्टी
हाँ नील क्रिस्टी, जो चर्च
चर्च
को
से है
रिप्रेजेंट करते
करते हैं।
हैं, वो थे उसमें। और मैं भी था। और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय राजनय पर खासकर जो इस समय कठिनाइयाँ आ रही हैं, उस पर बातचीत शुरू हुई थी। लेकिन फिर वो बहुत सारी चीज़ों पर चली गई। और मैंने तो हिंदी में ही बात की थी। और लोगों ने उसको सुना और बहुत सवाल हुए, बहुतों के उत्तर दिए गए। निश्चित तौर पर दुनिया में इस समय अंतर्राष्ट्रीय रिश्तों में बहुत तरह के चैलेंजेस नए पैदा हो गए जो इतने नहीं थे। ये एक इशू था। दूसरे, जिस तरह का मीडिया है दुनिया में इस समय, और जिस तरह से उसमें टेक्नोलॉजिकल कंट्रोल बहुत सीमित होता जा रहा है, बहुत कम हाथों में, जो डिस्पैरिटी की वजह से वैसे ही दुनिया में चीज़ें जो है बहुत कम हाथों में बहुत सारी चीज़ें होती जा रही हैं, और उससे तनाव है। और दुनिया भर में इस सब को लेके जो उथल पुथल हुई है द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध के बाद, इंस्टीट्यूशंस कैसे बदले हैं, उनका रोल कैसे कम हुआ है, इन सब चीज़ों पे बातचीत हुई, बड़ी अच्छी बातचीत हुई। और मॉडरेट चूंकि अभय जी कर रहे थे तो उसको कहना ही क्या, अंग्रेजी हिंदी दोनों में बहुत ठीक ठाक सी बात हुई।
जी। और ये अच्छा ये लगा कि पार्टिसिपेशन उधर से था। मैं एक छोटा एक उसमें भी बता दीजिए
हम्म
कि ये कैसे जे ए मूर यहाँ के हैं,
हम्म।
कांग्रेसमैन,
जो
वो
कांग्रेसमैन।
और कैसे आगे पूरे टाइम बैठे रहे।
जी जी
और उनके कंसर्न वैसे ही थे।
जी जी
एक व्यक्ति जो कहता है कि नहीं, भारत जरूरी है क्योंकि लार्जेस्ट डेमोक्रेसी है,
जी
भारत
जी जी
3 3 बार गया है भारत को समझने के लिए।
जी।
वहां के उसका एक मिनट का
वो
उनका ब्रीफ।
डेमोक्रेट सांसद थे, थे मतलब नहीं हैं, और ब्लैक हैं, और
यंग
बच्चों
है
की यंग है, और बहुत स्पष्ट थे अपने मामलों में।
वक्तव्यों में।
और भारत और अमेरिका के रिश्ते में जो जरूरत है दुनिया के लिहाज से, जो जो उसका जरूरीपन है, उस पर बहुत साफ साफ बोले। और अनेक सवाल लिए उन्होंने, और बहुत बार हस्तक्षेप भी किया ऐसे पैनल्स में जिसमें वो नहीं भी थे। सवाल आए तो वो खुद सवालिया बन गए, और काफी उन्होंने हिस्सा लिया, बहुत वक्त दिया। ये बताता है कि जो चिंताएं हैं वो वैश्विक हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें साझा हैं, और लोग उनको हल करना चाहते हैं। एक विजडम भी है हर जगह। और बहुत ही शानदार मैं कहूँगा। इस तरह से हम लोग तो भाई जब आए थे यहाँ कोलंबस बन के अप्रैल मई में, तब सोचा नहीं था कि 4 5 महीने बाद हम यहाँ यहाँ से इस तरह से मोहब्बत मिलेगी, और इतने लोग आएंगे, इतनी यूनिवर्सिटीज के रिप्रेजेंटेशन आए, इतने बड़े बड़े लोग आए, और इन्होंने कितना कंट्रीब्यूट किया। और यहाँ आके फिर पता लगता है जो बात है कि गांधी माने क्या है, हमारे पास कितना बड़ा एसेट है। ये और बात है कि हम अपने यहाँ गांधी जी को न तो उस तरह से सम्मान दे पाए हैं, और न उनको इस तरह से अमल में उनके साथ हम कुछ कदम भी नहीं चल पाए हैं। ये बार बार ऐसी जगहों पे आके लगता है जब दुनिया आपके मुंह पे आके आपको बताती है कि गांधी क्या है, और तब हमें लगता है कि हमें ही नहीं पता कि गांधी क्या
ठीक है, धन्यवाद शीतल जी।
है। जी।
और अब अपने पहले सेशन की शुरुआत करने जा रहे हैं। सत्याग्रह एंड सिविल रेजिस्टेंस फ्रॉम इंडियाज फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल टू ग्लोबल मूवमेंट्स। और इस बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट इशू पर बात करने के लिए हमारे साथ जो पैनलिस्ट और मॉडरेटर जुड़ने जा रहे हैं, मैं चाहूंगी एक छोटा सा इंट्रोडक्शन मैं उनका दे दूं। शीतल पी सिंह जी हैं हमारे साथ, जो कि सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट हैं, को फाउंडर हैं सत्य हिंदी के। He has been a prominent voice in independent media and political commentary. अक्सर आप उनको टीवी चैनल्स और डिजिटल मीडिया में अलग अलग प्लेटफॉर्म्स पर तथ्यों पर आधारित बातें रखते हुए आप उनको सुनते रहे होंगे, या मैं दूसरे अल्फाज में कहूँ तो मोदी की धज्जियां उड़ाते हुए आप उनको सुनते रहे होंगे। तो मैं चाहूंगी तालियों के साथ एक बार उनका हम इस्तकबाल करें प्लीज। जो हमारे अगले गेस्ट हैं, उनका नाम भी मैं यहाँ पर मेंशन करूंगी, रोहित त्रिपाठी, जो कि पॉलिसी एनालिस्ट बेस्ड इन वॉशिंगटन डीसी। ही स्पेशलाइजेस इन पब्लिक पॉलिसी एंड सिविल एंगेजमेंट विद अ ग्लोबल पर्सपेक्टिव। रोहित जी, इफ यू कैन हियर मी।
I'm not reading.
हमारे जो अगले पैनलिस्ट हैं, the Reverend Neil Christine, Principal of Religious Nationalism Project. He works at the intersection of faith, justice, and public life.
Thank you.
I think Sheetal ji and Neil, can we have you here? Yeah.
I got it. Yes.
और
It's connected.
इस सेशन को जो मॉडरेट करने जा रहे हैं, उनको किसी इंट्रोडक्शन की जरूरत नहीं है. प्रोफेसर अभय दुबे जी, सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट हैं, academic, widely respected for his insights on politics, media, and society. Abhay ji, please.
It's okay.
So I'll get you that.
The stage is yours now. You have the mic?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it in 45 minutes.
Thank you, Bushra, for introducing me kindly.
Sing.
सब साथियों को
Yeah, I'll just do it in
नमस्ते
45 minutes. That way.
और मैं
It's all good.
इस चर्चा के सत्र की शुरुआत हिंदी में करने के
Yeah, we're
लिए
good.
मैं अंग्रेजी में कर रहा हूँ क्योंकि हमारे साथ रेवरेंड नील क्रिस्टी हैं and he's not
Yeah, I
comfortable
pushed it
with
back. We're all good.
Hindi, so that's why yeah
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll just push it
I
back.
will
That way I
take
don't
this
have
foot
to.
to the other
So I can kind of
rather
fellowship
English.
with you guys.
Okay,
I got this question.
so after
Yeah, I was like,
yesterday's
oh, let's go.
thought-provoking and sometimes exhilarating
Hey,
discussions
you ready?
on various themes,
Yeah, I
I
know.
welcome you warmly on behalf of the organizers who have been painstakingly working for the success of this wonderful conference. Friends, this is going to be the first session of today's proceedings, which is, as we know, is the concluding day of the conference. As a moderator, I will now introduce the subject of discussion. As already announced, this session will belong to the idea of Satyagraha and civil resistance in the context of India's freedom struggle and global movements thereafter. Literature on Satyagraha is vast and variegated. Since we have only 75 minutes at our hand, it is next to impossible here either to sum it up or even map it in any meaningful way. Only two short points I wish to make here. First, the idea of Satyagraha is not something that Gandhi plucked from some of his readings or concocted from the assertion of esteemed Western thinkers such as Ruskin and Thoreau. No doubt, Ruskin and Thoreau influenced him, that Gandhi himself vouched for. But to reduce Gandhi's formulation of civil resistance to those who will be these two will be an injustice to the epistemological imprints he received from in social and family environment. In fact, several of Gandhi's authentic biographers have already informed us that he was deeply influenced by Vaishnavism of his mother Putli Bai. These postulates of Vaishnavism were filtered by the nuggets of the great Indian knowledge tradition, available in the philosophies propounded on the pages of Aitareya Brahman, Gautam Smriti, Shukra Niti Sar, Kamandak, and Mahabharat, Ramayana, and its more popular spin-off Ramcharitmanas. Modern scholars such as U.N. Ghoshal and K.M. Panikkar, and they are both sides of the fence. One is the leftist, another is not, had also accepted the presence and relevance of these ideas. Secondly, Gandhi's grounding in these epistemological patterns gave him a certain philosophical underpinning through which he went on to develop an absolutely radical understanding about the relationship between the people and state. He gave priority to the people's will to restrain the ruler who tries to establish his autocracy in the disguise of rule of law. Friends, I assure you that these pointers are not meant to raise any boundaries for the discussion. Instead, I intend to use them as nothing more than an appetizer so that we can relish the main course with all our intellectual gusto. Certainly, I consider it our good fortune that on this very serious and contemporary theme, we have three highly equipped and articulate speakers. Bushra has already introduced them to you, so I will not again go for that. Now the scene is complete. Protocol of today's discussion is simple. Like yesterday, whole session will last for 75 minutes only. Remember, lunch awaits us, and beyond this time limit, we run the risk of annoying the gods of food. Precisely for this reason, each speaker will have not more than 15 minutes each to give the starting presentation. Since I have already consumed 3-4 minutes, we will have a question answer session for next 25 minutes plus. So thank you from my side again to bear with me. And now I call upon my friend Rahul Tripathi to Rohit Tripathi to bestow upon us his insights.
Yeah, a lot of people have called me Rahul, by the way. I don't know why, but you must have heard of him. No, I was telling Congressman Moore that, Ro Khanna's first name is Rohit. That's my separate name. So Ro Khanna's doing a good job of maintaining my brand. So if you meet him, tell him that. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, this is an incredible honor to be here with what I call a group of truth seekers. That's who you all are. The work you do, whether it's as journalists, as representatives of people, as civil society activists, who I claim to be one, it's inescapable how anyone who is seeking truth non-violently cannot but admire Mahatma Gandhi. It's just not possible. Abhayji talked about the connection between Thoreau, the essays on civil disobedience being an inspiration to him, but Gandhi practiced it. There's a very famous quote by Dr. King, and he says, Jesus gave me the message, but Gandhi gave me the method. And on this day, on October 2nd, in this location, to have the honor of talking to you guys about my, not just admiration of Gandhi as a person, but primarily as a strategist. Gandhi is a man for all seasons in some sense, right? And the best season for Gandhi is a season of struggle. As you mentioned, Congressman Moore, you're a fighter. Everybody here, sitting here, has a fighter in them at the end of the day. And Gandhi absolutely taught us how to fight, but fight non-violently, fight without hate. And those are very difficult things to do. But guess what? He mobilized a nation that had about 14% literacy. 14. There were 330 million people in India at that time. Most of them had resigned to their fate under colonial rule. And for that man to come in, empower them, give them agency, as they say now, is nothing short of a miracle. Einstein was absolutely right when he said that generations to come will scarce believe that one as such ever walked in flesh and blood upon the earth. But again, I want to come back today to talk about Gandhi's methodology, one of his greatest contributions to humanity. I downplay Gandhi, the ideologue, because Gandhi's ideology on a lot of different things fluctuated throughout his life. And he was never shy of self-correcting himself, that I may be wrong on something and I'll change my position. And you can see that on many issues. And a lot of people who analyze his character, I think, miss the point. The point about Gandhi is how do you organize and how do you mobilize people who are marginalized at the end of the day? So I'm going to quickly go over an experience where that I felt changed my perception of Gandhi. Growing up in India, my perception of Gandhi was derived from textbooks, what I heard at home. I came from a family of freedom fighters. And Gandhi was elevated to almost a divine status, and there's good and bad about that. The good is that you don't try to analyze him. You don't try to get a deeper sense of him. He's just somebody who has to be revered. So my understanding of Gandhi was biographical. Where was he born? When did he go to South Africa? When did he go to England? He was, obviously a lot of people my generation in India especially learned about Gandhi from the movie, Richard Attenborough's movie. It's a great movie. It's a phenomenal movie. It's my favorite movie of all time, and anytime I start watching it, I have to watch it to the end. But it only scratches the surface of what kind of a strategic thinker Gandhi was. It was only when I came to Maryland, at the University of Maryland as an undergraduate student, that a friend of mine was taking a class on Gandhi, that I started to realize how shallow my understanding was. And fast forward to 2000, a good friend of mine, Eric co-host, he started a nonviolent studies circle. He was inspired by the work of Gene Sharp. So if those of you who don't know who Gene Sharp is, he's an amazing, he passed away in 2018, but Gene Sharp was a gentleman who refused to be drafted for the Korean War. This is in 1950. And before he went to jail, he wrote a book analyzing Gandhi's methodology, and he wrote a letter to Professor Albert Einstein. And he said, Professor Einstein, I'd love for you to write the foreword of the book, because this is what I think. I think nonviolence is our only way forward, and I would love to have your foreword. And he says, you're a brave man, Gene, that you're going to jail, number one, because you don't want to be drafted. Second, if I agree with it, I'll write it. So long story short, Einstein writes the foreword. Gene Sharp comes out of jail and then starts the Albert Einstein Institution at Harvard. And for the next 6 decades, he really boils down nonviolent struggle into a very methodical, systematic framework. And I've talked about it so many times that it'll take 30 seconds to go through it. First, number one, understand the issues from all perspectives, not just your perspective. And by and large, there are 3 entities that are at play in any problem, any situation. The people who want to transform the situation, the people who want to preserve the situation, and then the rest of the public, right? The rest of the public is simply resigned to the status quo. So you are yourself, let's call ourselves transformers, not the movies, but transformers for a second, right? You want to understand the issues from every single angle. Gandhi did that, Satyagraha for Satyagraha, by the way. He went to Champaran, the first one, 1917, and he studied there. He stayed there for 6 months, and he understood every aspect of the problem. Same thing if you go and look at the Satyagrahas from Gujarat, from Ahmedabad, but he's trying to mediate, the dispute between mill workers and the management. He goes there, he talks to both sides. So the first things first, understand the problem from all sides. The second is to develop local leadership. Once you know what the problem is, develop the local leadership. The leadership should be articulate, should be knowledgeable. And above all, you need to develop leaders that are educators. The leader should be able to develop further leadership. So that's that's step 2. But the third step in building a movement is the most important step, and that is building a constructive program. And what does that mean? That means, how do you lower the barrier to entry for everybody to participate? So Gandhi formally wrote it in 1941. It's called the constructive program, and in Hindi it's called the Rashnatmak Karyakram. And he had 18 different ways in which people could associate with the freedom movement. And if you couldn't do anything, just wear hand-spun clothing. Give up British cloth and wear hand. And the 18 points, you can go take a look. It's about Hindu-Muslim unity, the fight against untouchability, prohibition. I mean, the list is long. He combined a social reformation mission with a political mission at the same time. And then if you say the civil rights movement there too, ample evidence from freedom riders, from the sit-ins. It's you basically provide people. You basically meet people where they are and allow them to mobilize. And that's the beauty of nonviolence, right? It's not just the civil disobedience part. And shout out to the flotilla folks. I mean, by the way, Rajmohan Gandhi was talking about it, and that's just remarkable. I mean, that civil disobedience is a really important part of nonviolence. But even before that, if you want to mobilize people, and this is what Gandhi did, time and again, and this is what Dr. King studied about Gandhi when he went to India in the 1950s. Like, how do you guys do this, right? because we have a similar population which has been marginalized for so long, economically, educationally, in every sense of the word. What did you do? And that's what he did. So once you have a central vision, the vision for the civil rights movement was racial equality, right? And then there were multiple manifestations. The Voting Rights Act was just one of them, right? That was at the end of the journey, and you could see until Dr. King is shot in '69, and he's still working on economic justice and other things. Similarly, Gandhi had a pretty broad agenda. He had a central vision that political independence is the gate, is the door that we have to walk through, but that is only the beginning of the journey. It is not the end of the journey. So once you have the central vision, you have the constructive program, you've mass mobilized people. Now you're talking to your adversaries. You're talking to your adversaries from a position of strength, because you have now started to see the public being mobilized by what you're doing. And the next step after that is to negotiate with the adversary. It depends. Sometimes there's no negotiation. Sometimes there is some negotiation. And the negotiating, even on negotiations, Gene Sharp, distills Gandhi's work, is that negotiating terms have to be respectful. You have to give your adversary a way out. So Gandhi's compassion for his adversaries is always, flowing through the entire process. And only when negotiations fail, that's when you go to civil disobedience. It's called nonviolent direct action. So it's step 5. If you look at the process, it's not step 1. And that's why as a student of nonviolence, I find it frustrating at times when people go directly to protesting without doing all of the background work. And that's where, a lot of movements fail, because they do not invest the time and effort in building that capital that they need. They're basically going in for a 100-mile drive with gas in the tank for only 5 miles. And then they say, wow, now they're stranded after 5 miles. And that's what Gandhi has shown, that you have to build that capital that you're going to use when it's really, really needed. But the most interesting part that I find about Gandhi's approach is not step 5, not even civil disobedience, not the Salt March, it's reconciliation. Step 6 is reconciliation, that after you have achieved what you wanted to achieve, you have to reconcile with the people you opposed. And there's the last, Master, how much time I have. There's a story that in South Africa, Gandhi was, part of a movement. There were so many attacks on the rights of Indians in South Africa. So as part of one of the movements, he was in jail. He was writing petitions from prison. Long story short, he, the British government tell the South African government, you got to release Gandhi. So General Smuts is in charge of the jail, and he tells his clerk to go get Gandhi. So Gandhi comes into General Smuts' office and puts a bag on the desk, and Smuts like, whoa, what is this? Is this a bomb? And he goes, no, open it up. And he opens it up, and there are sandals. And he's like, what is this? Gandhi's like, oh, I made a cobbler friend in prison, and I thought I'd make you some sandals. And he's like, what? Who does this? On Gandhi's 75th birthday, 22 years later, Smuts wrote a letter to Gandhi, wishing him happy birthday. And he said, I've worn these slippers or these flip-flops for the last 22 years, 22 summers, and enjoyed them thoroughly, but I've never found myself worthy of them. And this is the power of reconciliation. But it all ties into this methodology. These are not individual, compassion traits, right? What Gandhi was able to do was to take this notion of individual compassion and meld it into a collective, right? Because he was always thinking about, what kind of society do I want at the end, right? I mean, and that's where you got to have long-term thinkers. There are political leaders today, not political, apolitical, corporate leaders, and so on and so forth. Right? The short term is everything. And there's no understanding of what the end state might be. And we live in a world of self-promotion. We live in a world of deep insecurities that lead to self-promotion. But Gandhi was always thinking about, what is the end state that I want to be? I mean, the most powerful concept in Gandhi's vocabulary was Swaraj. Swaraj means self-rule. And somebody once asked Gandhi, what is the India of your dreams? And he said, the India of my dreams is where every man and woman feels that their efforts are going in building their own nation. That's the ownership he wanted in people, that people should have in their own destiny. So I'm going to close with that. I think I've recapped for you the power of the methodology that nonviolence is, its potential to just mobilize people who on the surface may seem very heterogeneous, may seem incapable of doing big things, but a smart construction of a movement can overcome a lot of that. And I think, of course, it takes a man and a person, not a man, but a person like Gandhi to envision all of this and then execute this. So Gandhi is not just a visionary in coming up with the philosophy of what needs to be done. Today, I salute him as an executive. On March 12th, 1930, Gandhi gets up really early in the morning at Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad, and he tells the people gathered there, this is the day he starts his salt march, 206 miles to the ocean, to break the law, to break the salt law. And he gets up early in the morning, they have an all-religion prayer meeting, and he tells the people gathered there, I'm not coming back until I win India independence. And he never goes back. Because he gets there, he gets arrested, then he moves to another ashram, and then in 47, right after independence, he's shot. So I want to pay my homage to this great soul who lived a life not just for his country, but for the world and humanity. And the only thing I would want you to take away from what I said today was there's a pathway to achieving the society that he envisioned, which has dignity for everyone. But that pathway can only be a non-violent pathway. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohitji. While listening to you, I was recalling an incident in my life as a political activist. I was establishing a conversation with Comrade Vinod Mishra, who was the supreme leader of CPI-ML. When at that time that party, but a smaller one, small Communist Party of India, party was on its upswing. It was in those were the heydays of the CPI-ML, particularly in the Bihar's politics. And we were talking about the relationship between the social classes and the economic classes. So I asked Vinod Mishra, the comrade,
In 1923, the building was built here for a purpose. It was built here to combat several injustices that I need you to know about. Number one was child labor. Child labor was rampant in the United States, and the churches took the lead in trying to end child labor at the state level and then the federal level. The suffrage movement, we worked for decades to give women the right to vote. This building in 23 was there to make sure that women did not lose the right to vote, and that state by state they continued to gain access to all institutions. The third was living wage. And so in the United Methodist Church at the time, we saw what was happening with workers. We saw what was happening with immigrant communities, especially from Europe, Northern Europe, eventually then Central Europe, Southern Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America. But we saw that workers were not being treated with justice. We allied with workers, with labor movements, and we argued for the right for women, for worker justice and for a living wage. Those were the three core reasons this building was built. But since 1923, many other social justice movements have found their home here, and I want to lift only a few of them up for you. Ending apartheid. People organized from this building. They legislated. They met with members of Congress. They marched. They prayed. They did this in an interfaith way in this space to end apartheid in South Africa. Racial justice, the civil rights movement, this building had been at the heart of it all through the 1950s, through the 1970s, and we continue to be at the heart of it when it comes to human rights and civil rights movements. Stopping the war in Iraq. Many people across the board, interfaith, were the first to speak up against the illegality of invading Iraq. And we continue to do that, and we continue to do that with other wars. We opposed the war in Vietnam through this building. Indigenous people's rights, Native American rights have been argued from this building. Reproductive justice, which has been at the heart of many churches' missions, and we may not always agree on what that looks like, but the right for women to make choices for their own bodies has been much of what the work of many of the churches that are located here. I could go on, but I want you to imagine the social justice movements that the United States and India share and where they differ, and what difference it makes to have a space that's situated right near the United States Supreme Court and the United States Senate and Congress in doing this work. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. As I was driving from the Gandhi Memorial, I met a friend. His name is Emmanuel Cleaver, Representative Emmanuel Cleaver from Missouri. I've known him since he was elected. How do I know him? He's a United Methodist minister. So I knew him as a pastor in a church as he was organizing work with people who were working to do gang intervention. So we knew each other then. I knew him as a poet. I knew him as a pastor, someone who cared about people. And he's been a legislator now here for, almost 2 decades. He's there a long time, and he lives in this building. So there are members of Congress that live in this building. There are people who are members of the Supreme Court who have lived in this building. And so this is a very special place that you are meeting at. And it's a privilege for me as a United Methodist to make sure that you feel welcome here. And I hope you do feel welcome here. And I hope you will continue to come back here. With that said, I want to share just a little bit about the Religious Nationalisms Project, the organization that I represent today. We're an expression of the New York State Council of Churches. I'm one of the co-founders, along with my colleague, Reverend Peter Cook, who's located in New York City and Albany, New York. And what is our purpose? If Dr. King were here today, if Nehru were here, if Mahatma Gandhi were here in the room with us, would they agree with what I'm about to share? And I hope that they would. One of the greatest threats to the United States and India is religious supremacy, right? It's religious nationalism. And it is spilling over. It's a boiling over blood, nation upon nation. And it's happening in democracies, pluralistic democracies. Now, I'm not going to talk about Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to talk about Afghanistan, but I'm talking about pluralistic democracies. In the United States, we share this same disease as India does of religious nationalism. So the Religious Nationalisms Project was created intentionally for this purpose, to respond to the rising threat of religious nationalism in the United States and abroad by rejecting the assertion that God and government are one, that blesses a government that would then bless patriarchy by using religion to bless patriarchy, misogyny, violence against women. Something called replacement theory, which I'm happy to describe in more detail with you. The erasure of people's history, which is happening in India, it's happening in the United States, state by state. The use of religion for land acquisition, abuse of sacred narratives to defend exclusive territorial claims, the suppression of other religious groups. So that is the purpose of TRNP. By leveraging collective political will, we are finding that faith communities at the local level are able to speak for themselves. We do not need someone from Washington. And although I've worked here since 1996, we do not need people from Washington, D.C. speaking for people at the local level. We need to have the dialogue, and the work must be organized. The agitation has to happen at the local level, and we need to support what's happening at the local level. That is our argument. A priority for us is to raise awareness among Christians, Jews, that human rights crises in India is escalating. It raises alarm for us that every Jew, every Christian in the United States should pay attention to this, because it presents a political agenda that is counter to what we understand as the vision of Gandhi. It evades criticism. It weaponizes some religious liberty, claiming that religious liberty and religious freedom are the same thing, that they are not supremacy, which is a lie. We have grave concerns over the constitutionality in India as well as in the United States of religious nationalism and the impact that it has, changing the constitution at the state level, at the federal level. So TRNP stands with many churches that have already made statements about the human rights situation in India. And I want to give you 3 of those statements and read from them so that you as journalists know and can share the story of what the millions of Christians are saying in this country collectively from a prophetic tradition. And I'm going to start with churches in India, what they are saying, and then I'll focus on what we're saying here in the United States. The United Christian Forum, which includes Catholics, Orthodox, Protestant churches, it represents 32 million people in India, demand that if this trend of religious nationalism in India is not stopped immediately through international political will, the concerted government action, it will threaten the existence of diverse Christian communities before 2050. 2050. That is the concern of the United Christian Forum. Case in point, the number of attacks against Christians has increased dramatically from 127 in 2014 to 834 by December 2024. Hotspots of viral hate, brutal mob violence, rampant social ostracization, maybe 10 times the number I've just quoted. At the grassroots, as attacks go unreported, retribution is an environment of impunity continue to be promoted by the government. Political patronage is rewarded when it comes to religious nationalism. The UCF has said that fear dominates the discourse in India. This is what we are hearing in the United States. Fear of the cultural police, which define who is an Indian, who is a loyal citizen, who is an alien, who is to be identified, who is to be isolated, who is to be eliminated. Fear of an establishment born out of experiences of the past decade, where the guilty go free. The innocent priests and pastors and their families have been pushed into jails without bail, repeatedly denied. I think about Father Stan Swami. If you're in India, you know who Father Stan Swami is, and you know his case. This has been brought to the United States Congress. They have debated it, they have spoken about it, and they have lifted this up. The challenge is with our current president, but we do have members of Congress who have not forgotten Father Stan and have not forgotten other political prisoners and are continuing to speak up. We stand also with the National Council of Churches. The National Council of Churches, friends, is located in this building. Okay, we represent 100,000 local congregations, 40 million mainline Protestant, Eastern Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, African American churches, evangelical, peace churches. Less than 1 year ago, they passed a resolution that says this, and I'm going to give it to you verbatim, that religious nationalism in India is a potent source of danger when the language, the images, the text, the symbols of a majority religion are merged with political, legal, ethnic, and religious identities to assert a narrow interpretation of power, of destiny, of domination, of privilege, legitimating the lynching of Muslims, the burning of churches, sexual assault against women, attempted assassination of advocates. And we know that this has happened in the United States. We know that transnational aggression is real, and we know there's a bill, and you should be aware of this as journalists. It is being considered by both the House and the Senate to address transnational aggression, primarily perpetrated by countries, democratic countries like India. The National Council of Churches also calls upon member churches as well as partner organizations to raise awareness of the financial and other community support Hindu nationalism receives in the United States, to denounce any actions that aim to provide such support, to advocate to local legislatures, including the terror of caste as a form of discrimination and non-discrimination laws. In the United States, what would Gandhi and King say about caste that continues to be practiced in the United States? Casteism that's been exploited, been imported. How do we address this issue? This is a priority for us as churches. And I'm going to give you a final comment when it comes to my own church, the United Methodist Church, and what we have said. We have 6.5 million members in the United Methodist Church. There are over 30,000 congregations, all colors, all races represented. We have 6 million members across Africa, Europe, Eurasia. I travel frequently to Africa, countries in Africa, to do work on conflict resolution with them and advocacy on justice with them. They are aware of the situation in India. They are very aware of the situation in India. The United Methodist Asian American Caucus has said in the last decade, Hindu nationalists, with the help of Christian nationalists and the alliance between the two, have injected their far-right ideas into to textbooks. California is one example. Recruited Steve Bannon, who serves as co-chair of the Hindu Caucus of the Republican Party, targeted Indian Christians and Dalits through the innocuously named Hindu American Foundation, the HAF, and death threats to dozens of U.S. professors, condemned the forced displacement of tens of thousands in the northern east state of Manipur. The United Methodist Church has called for the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom to designate India as a country of particular concern, or CPC. Not quite sure how this is heard by journalists in India. It has advocated for the U.S. Congress to impose targeted sanctions on the Indian government agencies and officials responsible for human rights abuses based on religious nationalism, and called for the freezing of assets, financial assets, and the denial of visa entry to perpetrators of Hindutva and hate crimes. The United Church of Christ has come up with a similar resolution just a few months ago. I was privileged to be with them. And I think the final comment is this: Christians of diverse traditions share a prophetic notion of values. A prophetic notion of values. It's articulated and embodied in all that Dr. King wanted us to remember about his life. It is consistent with Gandhi's movement. It is a movement for pluralistic democracy, recognizing that God's gift to humanity is human dignity. Our gift to each other is human rights. Every person is deserving of human rights. Our call then is to share with all faiths, to welcome, to care for the stranger, a priority that we share across religious tradition, to prioritize the needs of the poor over the wants of the rich, and to set the prisoners and the oppressed free. And with that, I do again say welcome. Welcome to the United Methodist Building, and welcome to a movement for social justice that spans religious tradition, is pluralistic, is welcoming, and we hope to welcome you back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Christie. Your presentation was full of forceful oratory in the best tradition of Dr. King. Thank you again. And particularly, his intervention leads us to the problem not only of United States, but of the current Indian politics also, where the religious nationalism is ruling the roost, almost ruling the roost. And it's very difficult for us to devise the ways and means to contain it or defeat it. So this is the I think you have talked about the Gandhi's relevance beyond the United States, beyond India, and you took the entire gamut of the problem of the religious nationalism. Thank you very much again. Now I call upon my friend Sheetal ji. Please come.
Sorry, I will speak in Hindi because I've read it in Hindi, which I may not be able to convey the knowledge of it. So sorry for that. मैं एकदम शुरुआत करूंगा टाटा से, मेरा ख्याल है और उसमें ज्यादा टाटा से भारत से संबंधित। भारत में इस समय पिछले 8-9 महीनों से ये हो गया है कि एक तरफ बढ़ता जा रहा है। हमारे करीब $30 बिलियन का रेवेन्यू है इंफॉर्मेशन, सूचना का,
जिसमें हर तरह की सूचना शामिल है, और उसमें से अब डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म्स का जो हिस्सा है वो 32-33% पहुंच चुका है, और ये पिछले 4-5 सालों में इसने अपने को लगभग 70-80% सालाना, और अब तो 100% की जंप लगा के जा रहा है। तो बहुत जल्दी ये 50 तक पहुंच जाएगा। जो दूसरा मीडियम था, जो इसके पहले जिसका कब्जा था, टेलीविजन, उसका हिस्सा घटना शुरू हुआ है, वो अब 28% पे है। लेकिन ये दोनों मिलके 60% हो जाते हैं। और हमारे बापूजी के जमाने में जो हथियार थे हमारे पास सूचना के, और जो औजार थे यानी अखबार, उसका हिस्सा बहुत तेजी से सिकुड़ते हुए और अखबार और अन्य सारे माध्यमों का हर साल बहुत तेजी से गिर रहा है, और वो 30-35%, 40% रह गया है। बापू के जमाने में और काले सफेद अखबारों के जमाने में हमारे देश में, भारत में, जो रजिस्टर्ड अखबार थे उनकी संख्या 1 मिलियन के आसपास थी, 10 लाख के आसपास थी। फिर रंगीन अखबार आए, जब उनमें मशीन आ गई बड़ी और कीमत, पैसा बहुत आ गया, बहुत पैसा लगने लगा, तो उनकी संख्या एकदम से घटी। और वो हमारे यहाँ जो रंगीन अखबार रजिस्टर्ड हैं, जो अब वही चलते हैं, तो ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट बिल्कुल लगभग मर चुके हैं, तो वो 1,40,000 रह गए। उसके बाद टेलीविजन आया, और टेलीविजन ने चीजों पे कब्जा किया और सूचना में सबसे आगे बढ़ गया, रेवेन्यू भी उसके पास ज्यादा हो गया। तो 450 करीब 475 हमारे यहाँ टेलीविजन चैनल्स हैं पूरे भारत में, हर भाषा के मिला के, जो खबरें दिखाते हैं, जो सूचना हमें देते हैं, इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोवाइड करते हैं, वो 450 के आसपास है। और उसके बाद अब जब डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म्स आए, तो अब हमारे पास इंफॉर्मेशन के जो प्लेटफॉर्म है वो सिर्फ 2 ही हैं मेजर, और एक लोकल है स्नैपचैट करके, वरना ये दोनों मेटा और गूगल में बटा हुआ है पूरी इंफॉर्मेशन का सेक्टर, जो बड़ी तेजी से उसके कब्जे में जा रहा है, जो ऑलरेडी 32% है, जो लीडर हो चुका है, और जो हमारी सोच समझ, हमारी हर चीज को जिसका कब्जा है, जो हमें एंटरटेन भी कर रहा है, हमें इन्फॉर्म भी कर रहा है, हमें करप्ट भी कर रहा है, हमें यूज भी कर रहा है, हमें डिजिटल मीडियम से उसके जो वाणिज्य है, बिजनेस है, उसमें भी वो एंगेज कर रहा है। हम टेलीफोन से ही सब काम करते हैं। ये सब करने का जो प्लेटफॉर्म्स है वो सिर्फ 2 लोगों के पास चलेगा, और वो दोनों लोग यहाँ हैं जहां हम लोग आज बैठ के काम कर रहे हैं। तो ये डेवलपमेंट तो हुआ दुनिया में, पिछले सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद इतने इंस्टीट्यूशंस बने, बहुत सारी चीजें हुई, बहुत सारा और सब कुछ हुआ, लेकिन ये जो हो रहा है ये बहुत खतरनाक है कि जो मालिकाना है वो एक जमाने में, जो जब हम लोग बहुत पिछड़े थे, बहुत कमजोर थे, और जब गांधी जी का आदर्श हमारे सामने था, तो 1 मिलियन लोग अखबार देश में निकाल रहे थे, रजिस्टर्ड अखबार। अब वो सब गायब है, और अब सिर्फ 2 इंस्टीट्यूशंस के हाथ में इंफॉर्मेशन का पूरा सेक्टर है। और अगर सरकारें इन 2 इंस्टीट्यूशंस के जो लोकल ब्यूरोक्रेट्स हैं हमारे यहाँ जो तैनात है, सिर्फ उनको एंगेज कर लें अपने साथ, तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि पब्लिक के हाथ में अब इंफॉर्मेशन अपनी है ही नहीं। इसने सारी दुनिया में ये संकट आया है, और पिछले जो हम लोग 15-20 सालों के जितने भी मूवमेंट, चाहे अरब स्प्रिंग देखें या कहीं भी देखें, सबसे पहले एक सूचना आती है, जहां ऐसा कुछ होता है तो वहां के एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन सबसे पहले इंटरनेट क्लोज करते हैं, क्योंकि वो कंट्रोल है, वहां पर इंफॉर्मेशन का कंट्रोल है इंटरनेट के हाथ में, वो जा चुका है अब हमारे हाथ से, और उसकी ओनरशिप भी जा चुकी है। और यूएस समेत जो मूवमेंट्स हुए हैं 2011 में यहां हुआ, 12 में हुआ, वो सब किसके, वो डिस्पैरिटी पे थे, वो डिस्पैरिटी से शुरू हुए हैं। इसी दौरान कैपिटलिज्म की डिस्पैरिटी ने सारी दुनिया में कैरेक्टर ही बदल दिया है सारी चीज का। ये इंफॉर्मेशन के सेक्टर में नहीं बदला है, पहले तो वहां बदला है जहां से सब चीजें नियंत्रित होती, और सारी दुनिया में कैपिटलिज्म डिस्पैरिटी के फॉर्म को लेके आया। कोल्ड वॉर खत्म होने के बाद उसको कोई रोकने वाला नहीं था, और उसके लिए कोई जरूरी नहीं था वो ह्यूमन इंडेक्स पे काम करे। यूरोप में भी बदलाव शुरू हुए, आपके यहाँ ज्यादा हुए, और हम जैसे देशों में जो कॉपी करते हैं इन सब चीजों की, उसने तो बहुत तेजी से उसको अंगीकार कर लिया। अब भारत की हालत तो ये है, हमारे यहाँ तो ऐसे इंस्टीट्यूशन काम ही नहीं कर पा रहे हैं जो इन सब चीजों की स्टडी करते थे, वो बाहर से करते हैं, 2-2, 3-3 साल पुराने डाटा पे डिपेंडेंट है। लेकिन वो कैरेक्टर बता रहा है कि हमारे यहाँ 1% लोग 40% एसेट्स के मालिक हो चुके हैं, 1% भारत में, और 10% लोग करीब 60 से लेके 70% एसेट्स के मालिक हैं। यानी 90% लोग देश के, जो एक गरीब देश है, 145 करोड़ लोगों को 4 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी में बांट रहा है, ऐसे देश में 90% लोग उस देश की 30% इकोनॉमी पे जिंदा है। तो एक भारी डिस्पैरिटी वो पैदा कर रहा है। एक बहुत बड़ा सेक्शन है सोसाइटी का जो सब सहारन अफ्रीका की कंडीशंस में है, और एक बहुत छोटा सेक्शन है जिसके पास सारे एसेट्स बड़ी तेजी से उसकी ओर जा रहे हैं। सारे पोर्ट उसके हैं, सारे एयरपोर्ट उसके होते जा रहे हैं, सारे इंडस्ट्री उसकी होगी, जो नया बिजनेस आएगा वो उसका होगा। एग्रीकल्चर छोड़ के लगभग कोई एरिया नहीं है जिसमें वो मोनोपोली 10-5 लोगों के हाथ में न चली जाए। जो रूसी टर्म जो है ओलिगार्क जो कहते हैं, ओलिगार्क कैपिटलिज्म ने इस सबको ओवर पावर कर लिया है। अब उसमें जो इंफॉर्मेशन का काम है, जो होता था पब्लिक को एम्पावर करने का, जो हमारे बापू वगैरह ने हमें सिखाया था, और जर्नलिज्म हम लोग जब आए तो यही समझ के आए थे कि हम लोग जो कर रहे हैं, हम इंफॉर्मेशन जो सरकार छुपाना चाहती है उसे सामने लाना ही जर्नलिज्म है। और किसके लिए सामने लाना है? पब्लिक के लिए। ये चीज उल्टा गिलास हो गया है। अब सारा तंत्र ऐसा हो गया है जिसमें पब्लिक के पास इंफॉर्मेशन न जाए, ये करने वाले लोग ज्यादा है, ये करने वाले मंच ज्यादा है, और सब कंट्रोल्ड है। और हमें ये गलतफहमी होती है कि हम इन मंचों के जरिए वो काम कर पा रहे हैं जो काम हम करना चाहते थे, जो हम पढ़ लिख के आए थे। ऐसा नहीं। ये एल्गोरिदम के जरिए और टेक्नोलॉजी के जरिए सेग्रीगेशन कर देते हैं। जिस तरह की बात हम लोग कर रहे हैं यहां पे और हम लोग भारत में करते हैं, और ये सब लोग उन्होंने बांट रखा है। हमारी बात हमारे ही लोगों तक जाती है, हमारी बात बहुत सारे लोगों तक जाती ही नहीं। टेक्नोलॉजी में ये सामर्थ्य है और ये रोज बढ़ती जा रही है सामर्थ्य, कि वो हमें केंद्रित कर दे, वो हमारे जैसे लोग छांट ले। ये मेटा वगैरह के, फेसबुक के, इंस्टाग्राम के, इनके सब पे सब छटा हुआ है कि किस तरह के लोगों को क्या देना है, किस उम्र के लोगों को क्या देना है। और आश्चर्यजनक ये आंकड़ा आपको लगेगा, भारत में 50,000 लोग, 50 लाख लोग, 5 मिलियन लोग इस इंफॉर्मेशन गिमिक के दौर में रोजगार के लिए इस पर निर्भर है। 50 लाख युवा हमारे देश में रील बना के जिंदा रहने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। उनमें से 9 लाख लोगों को रील के पैसे भी मिलते हैं रील बनाने के। इतनी कठिन स्थिति है कि इंफॉर्मेशन के सेक्टर में तो जाहिर है वो कैसे रील बनाएंगे, क्योंकि उनके सामने, कल भी बातचीत में एक बार किसी के मुंह से निकल गया था, उनके सामने होता है व्यूज कितने हैं। तो व्यूज हासिल करने के लिए पूरा सोसाइटी करप्ट हो रहा है बहुत तेजी से। ये चूंकि ये तो तंत्र ऐसा है कि बहुत ज्यादा लोगों तक जाता है। हमारे यहाँ जो इंफॉर्मेशन की ताकत है इन दोनों सेक्टर्स की, वो 990 करोड़ लोगों तक चली जाती है। एक ऐसे देश में जिसमें 100 करोड़ लोगों के पास, 145 में 100 करोड़ लोग हमारे यहाँ ऐसे हैं जिनके पास, खुद हमारी इंडस्ट्री की स्टडी के अनुसार, इस साल की शुरुआत में की गई स्टडी के अनुसार, उनके पास कोई परचेजिंग पावर ही नहीं। हम एक बड़ी गलतफहमी भारत में बेचते हैं, और बहुत सारे लोग जो मतलब आज की व्यवस्था के पैरोकार हैं, वो इस बात को बहुत जोर से कहते हैं कि हम बहुत बड़ा बाजार है। ये रियलिटी नहीं है। हमारे बाजार में 100 करोड़ लोग तो कुछ खरीदने की हालत में ही नहीं है। वो जिंदा है, बस उनको जिंदा, 82 करोड़ लोगों को हम राशन दे रहे हैं। 5 किलो राशन दे के हमने जिंदा रखा हुआ है। और जो CMI का डाटा है वो बता रहा है कि 38% नौजवान जिनकी उम्र 20 साल से ऊपर है, जो रोजगार की मार्केट में है, 38% इनमें से लोगों ने मान लिया है कि उनको उनकी जिंदगी में कोई रोजगार मिल ही नहीं सकता, वो अब रोजगार की तलाश ही नहीं करते। तो हमारे रोजगार से रिलेटेड जो आंकड़े हैं वो इन 38% को माइनस करके बन रहे हैं। और इन चीजों को सामने रखने का, कह पाने का, पहुंचा पाने का हमारे पास जरिया हमारा अपना नहीं है। वो नियंत्रित है, सेग्रीगेटेड है, वो लिमिटेड है, वो चैलेंज के तौर पे है। दरअसल इन सवालों के उत्तर की जरूरत है। और इसलिए क्या हो रहा है कि अभी जैसे कल बता रहे थे हमारे शुभेंद्र जी, इनका IITN का ग्रुप है। भारत में इससे बढ़िया पढ़ाई लिखाई के इंस्टीट्यूट नहीं थे, और शायद वो भारत क्यों, सारी दुनिया में वहां से आए हुए काबिल लोगों को अमेरिका और सारे पश्चिम ने अपने लिए इस्तेमाल किया। वो इतने काबिल थे, अच्छी पढ़ाई वहां थी, देश के लिहाज से तो सर्वोत्तम थे ही। उन्होंने बताया कि उनका ग्रुप जो है IITians का, उसमें 1/3 लोग ऐसी बातों पर यकीन करते हैं कि हमारे यहाँ प्लास्टिक सर्जरी 7,000 साल पहले थी, गणेश जी का सर हमने लगा दिया था। उनमें से 1/3 लोग इस पे यकीन करते हैं। वो क्यों हुआ है? वो इसी इंफॉर्मेशन कंट्रोल से हुआ। व्हाट्सएप ने हमारी पूरी सोसाइटी को जहर पहुंचाने में पिछले 10 साल में वहां पहुंचा दिया है जहां सोचने समझने का कोई मतलब नहीं रह गया। अजीब लगता है कि हम क्या बात कर रहे हैं। ये आदमी डॉक्टर है, ये आदमी इसरो का चीफ है। इसरो जो चंद्रमा पे यान भेजने के लिए जिम्मेदार है, भेज रहा है, सफलतापूर्वक भेज रहा है, दुनिया में सबसे सस्ता भेज रहा है, लेकिन वो उसका एक रेप्लिका लेके एक मंदिर के सामने खड़ा हुआ है, धोती वोती पहन के। उसे यकीन ही नहीं है अपने पे, जो उसने बनाया है उस पे, उस नॉलेज पे उसे यकीन ही नहीं। उसे व्हाट्सएप के झूठ पे ज्यादा यकीन है, और वो धोती वोती पहन के वो भी पूजा करने खड़ा हुआ कि इस बार मेरा फेल न हो। हम यहां पहुंचा दिए गए, पहुंच नहीं गए, पहुंचा दिए गए। तो इंफॉर्मेशन के सवाल बहुत बड़े और बहुत गहरे हैं, और हमारे पास भी, मेरे पास भी इसका कोई उत्तर नहीं है। मैं तो इन सवालों को चाहता हूं कि ज्यादातर लोगों तक जैसे कि तैसे पहुंचे, इनमें जितना सच हो सके वो सच आप तक हो, आपको पता लगे, और हम सब लोग उसकी तलाश में है कि इनके क्या उत्तर। इस दौर में अगर जर्नलिज्म कोई है तो कैसे किया जाए, कैसे उसे लोगों तक पहुंचाया जाए। इंफॉर्मेशन, जो करप्ट इंफॉर्मेशन का पूरा एक मतलब बोलबाला है, उसी का कब्जा है, उसमें कैसे अपनी चीख और ये फैक्ट्स ले जाए जाए, ये काम बहुत जरूरी और बहुत जिम्मेदारी का है। लेकिन मेरे पास भी इसका कोई उत्तर नहीं कि कैसे किया जाए। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
I'll get the translation.
Thank you very much, Sheetal ji. Sheetal ji has painted a dystopian world where the oligarch capitalism and information technology, all these things have combined into a very difficult situation. And in a way, he has gestures towards a problematic that whether the Gandhian technology, the Gandhian political tools can tackle this particular situation, where the democratically elected government surreptitiously becomes the elected autocracy, and everything's being done in the name of constitution, while all the time violating the spirit and word of constitution. But every time they are asserting that whatever they are doing in the name of constitution, and they are just propagating a pink picture about the Indian economy and all those things. So the question is, in fact, is before all of us, or we should reflect in the process of the question answer session whether the Gandhian political technology can deal with this kind of dystopian situation. So now floor is open for the question answer session. Question and answer session will last 25 minutes, and please try to be brief, crisp, and please desist from giving a parallel paper. Please.
People, I found your thoughts very illuminating, very disturbing. I think my question is just, I'm sorry. In the context of this, I mean, the gist of your talk, as I understand it, is everything is captured. So we're here, where do we go? But I wonder how we think about something like the Bharat Jodo Yatra in this context. That to me was political mobilization on the ground. I mean, whatever one might think of, I'm not praising or putting the Congress on any pedestal here, or Rahul Gandhi, but the idea that you can still go to the people, that you can walk among them, and that alone can break the tools of technology and the hold of the elites, because the regular people can see you, can talk to you, and then all the fake stuff on WhatsApp falls away. So I wonder how much that is so to answer for Abhayji's point, this is a Gandhian tool. This is the Gandhian method. And it seems to me, I mean, when we tracked impact of the Bharat Jodo Yatra on electoral outcomes, that moved the needle significantly. It helped them. So it seems to have an impact. It does seem to break through. So I wonder what you can think of mass politics along those lines. And then just if that isn't the answer, is there a way to create public collectives? The problem is profit motive. Is there a way to create public collectives on media that allow you to continue to function and exist and also generate your own alternative pushes, not just WhatsApp, but on these alternative app sites like Discord and so on, just these alternative channels to get the message out?
Will respond. But Sheetalji will respond, and if Reverend Christie or Rohit want to say something on it.
फिर मैं आपको एक डाटा दूंगा। मोदी जी सबसे पहले ट्विटर पे आ गए थे बड़े पॉलिटिशियंस में, सबसे पहले चीफ मिनिस्टर थे जो ट्विटर पे आए, और उन्होंने एक अमेरिकन एजेंसी ने उनको ये सब पढ़ के बताया था कि आपको ये करना चाहिए इन चीजों में, और वो उन्होंने करना शुरू कर दिया था जब वो चीफ मिनिस्टर ही थे और उन पर बड़े दाग थे। राहुल गांधी उसके 7-8 साल बाद ट्विटर पे आए, लेट आए, और ये जब भारत जोड़ो यात्रा हुई ठीक उसी समय या उसके पहले उन्होंने अपनी कांग्रेस आईटी सेल पूरी ढंग से ऑर्गेनाइज की, उसमें अच्छे लोगों को रखा, स्पेशलिस्ट को लगाया, और एक बहुत बड़ी टीम अब उनके पास भी है जो उनका मीडिया मैनेज करती है। और मैं वैसे प्राइवी नहीं हूं, इस इंफॉर्मेशन का 100% नहीं कह सकता, लेकिन फिर भी मुझे पता है ये कि उन्होंने बाकायदा यहां कांटेक्ट किया मेटा ऑफिस में, और यहां लोगों को लगाया, उनकी जो पार्टी के लोग हैं, बड़े लोग हैं बहुत सारे, और उन्होंने यहां से वो चीजें लूज कराई कि उनको भी रिप्रेजेंटेशन मिले इस प्लेटफॉर्म पे। तो अब उनकी सोशल मीडिया टीम भी वही सब कर रही है जो मोदी जी ने पहले किया, जिसकी वजह से मोदी जी बहुत आगे चले गए इंफॉर्मेशन वॉर में, और ये सब लोग बहुत पीछे रह गए। अब इसमें क्या होता है कि राहुल गांधी की पार्टी और मोदी जी की पार्टी तो ये काम कर लेंगे, लेकिन हिंदुस्तान में 700-800 पार्टियां रजिस्टर्ड हैं, वो 798 पार्टियां इस काम को नहीं कर पाएंगी। दे विल वो अनरिप्रेजेंटेड जाएंगी। तो फिर हम वहां रहे कि छांट के 2 पार्टियां जो आईटी सेल में स्पेंड कर सकती हैं, जो मेटा के ऑफिस तक जाके लॉबिंग कर सकती हैं, और जो एक भारत जोड़ो यात्रा निकाल सकती हैं जिसमें करीब 900 करोड़ रुपए खर्च हुए थे। ये पैसे बहुत आसान नहीं है, सब पार्टियों के लिए संभव नहीं है। तो इतना तो सेग्रीगेशन कर ही दिया सिस्टम ने कि सिर्फ 2 लोग अब पॉलिटिक्स कर सकते हैं, एक कांग्रेस और एक बीजेपी।
So what's interesting in your question is, while the mechanism of propagation is contested, as Sheetalji just said, that it took the Congress Party to move people at Meta over here in Silicon Valley to get the algorithm loosened up so that when they did something, it got propagated. I think it's still worth looking at how low tech the original idea is, which is just walking, right? And that's the beauty of non-violence and mass mobilization through that we still have to do simple acts of courage while we manage the propagation of those acts, but ultimately it's still a simple act of courage that matters. And I think, going back to what I was saying earlier, the constructive program allows you to build multiple such acts of courage. Whether in the civil rights movement, it was the freedom riders, and it was the people who were doing the sit-ins, and then the list of things you could do was long. So by providing low-tech, easy-to-do things for people to register their sentiment, their protest, and ultimately to build something socially constructive is step one. And then, you can, once you've done that, then you work on, and I guess in parallel with the propagation mechanisms through which you can go. But I think let's not shortchange the strategic value of the act of walking 4,000 kilometers, which is the basis for everything.
On the point since Gandhi's name was invoked earlier. Oh, sorry. since Mamdani's name was invoked earlier, Mamdani broke through. I mean, one of the things that helped him break through was walking from the top of Manhattan to the end of Manhattan, and that captured people's imagination.
Step one in the entire process for the nonviolent framework is listening to people from all sides. You know, his thing was, I mean, there's not to spend too much time on Zoran, but he wanted to know why poor, traditionally Democratic constituents voted for Trump. So that's why he walked. So there's a genuine curiosity that a leader who is serious about change will show, and the mechanisms through which they can understand that are relatively low tech.
I'll give, if I understand the question correctly. So when you and I had a conversation yesterday about Bishop Barber and the methodologies that Bishop Barber would use here in Washington, D.C. in organizing people. He organized folks at the state level every Monday, and he's tried to translate some of those methodologies which don't require movement, but they involve gathering. At the state level, and certainly here in Washington, D.C. When I think about your question and your comments about movement, I think from as a clergy person, and I think that if an imam were here, or a rabbi were here, or a Hindu priest were here, I think, or a Catholic priest, I think they would agree with me. The spiritual piece of this is pilgrimage. This notion that the walk itself is a holy walk, that the destination and that the origin are connected, and that God is in that process. And if we believe that, and I do believe that as a clergy person representing church and in solidarity with other faith traditions, I look at where people have practiced this, and it is being practiced. It's not back in the 1960s and 70s. It's happening today. I think of a father from North Carolina. I wish he were from South Carolina, but he's from North Carolina. And he walked here from North Carolina to Washington, D.C. What was the purpose of his walk? It was to walk for his daughter who didn't have access to health care. So she was suffering. She was suffering because the insurance agencies were not covering the disabilities that she was living with. And this is someone who does not identify as a Democrat or a Republican. He's quite traditional in his beliefs, his theological beliefs, and even his politics, but it's a question of justice. And on his walk, he spoke with churches and synagogues to tell the story, to listen to their stories about access to healthcare. And then his part of his destination before he walked back home, he didn't fly or drive, but he walked back home, was to speak to his members of Congress. I think about my sisters who are Catholic nuns. Catholic nuns have in this country, again, I'm speaking to you as journalists from India, something called Nuns on the Bus. During the election time, this happened under Obama, it's happened under Trump, to raise awareness to social justice issues, especially around economic justice. We will have Catholic nuns who have gathered together and have walked and taken buses across the United States to listen to the people. And it's become an iconic image to see these nuns who are, committed religious going on the road. They're not staying in a church or a monastery in a community. They're hitting the streets. They're on the streets. I talk to people in Washington, D.C., and I am part of it, in Washington, D.C., in Baltimore, where I show up and I walk from one location to the other to raise awareness. That witness has power. That witness has power. That is the continued legacy of Dr. King, certainly of Gandhi, but it is a practice that I would just remind us is a spiritual practice. It begins as a spiritual practice, and it gives us the spiritual strength to do the work that we need to do.
Thank you, Reverend. Another question, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one important thing that I think we haven't covered.
Let another question come. Then in that process, you can come up.
He's asking.
I got a little depressed, but also hopeful.
Sorry.
So I teach a class in which I talk about grand strategy. What is grand strategy? And I'm going to summarize the grand strategy very simply by saying, "Bada hokar kya banunga?" When I grow up, I will be a doctor or engineer. So you have a strategy, you want to become that. So my students keep asking me this question. Said, Modi has a grand strategy, Viksit Bharat by 2047. What is the other vision? That is the question that my students keep asking. And I cheat. I said, good, let's gather in groups. Now you tell me, because I don't have an answer to that question. So what is the grand strategy? I actually sent a note to Rahul Gandhi and actually then published a piece making this point as to what is the vision that I need to look forward to. Because the answer is, let's go back to pre-2014.
Yeah.
But the country was not happy with 2013. That's why 2014 happened. So what is the answer? Is it Bharat Jodo? Is Rahul Gandhi the vision? That this is our alternative to Viksit Bharat? Obviously not, because everybody wants Viksit Bharat. What is it, 2047, 2037? So to me, the question is, if Congress or the alternative leadership is not able to offer an alternative vision, maybe you should.
Let me answer.
Please.
Good question.
Yeah.
Will you understand my Hindi?
Yeah. Also now,
Modi is not successful because he has given this vision of 2047. He is successful because of hatred. He preach, he propagate, and he's successful in that. He's thriving on hatred.
You mean this?
Can I?
Yeah, it's camouflage. It's just
Yeah, go ahead.
It's nothing.
Go ahead.
So my view is that in the country, sometime back when the first election was coming on, 2019, a very revered ex-MP from the Rajya Sabha advised Modi and publicly went on record to say, if you want to succeed, progress and this kind of development will not get you votes. Start isolating Hinduism from Hindutva. And that this difference between Hinduism and Hindutva is the cause of our all chaos. We used to greet in my young days to another Hindu brother, Ram Ram. Today it's a slogan of war. Ram Ki Jai, Ram Shri Ram. The difference is there.
Yes.
So long as we don't speak the truth. And I can only say one parable in history. Nanak made 4 journeys across the bloody world. And what did he do? He never retorted back. He just spoke truth. Truth is that this is the problem my country is. Hinduism was Hindutva. We all sitting here are Hindus. My mother was Hindu. So there's no difference between us. We are human beings. Hinduism propagated universal brotherhood. And that is destroyed in the present country. And so long as our journalists, this is my small observation, or little what I know. I can't compare with your knowledge.
Thank you.
Second,
I would just say that real quick that I'm sure there's a problem of narrative. The Democrats would say that, the Congress Party says that. I don't think that's even the bigger part of the problem. I think that the Congress Party, the Democratic Party, left-leaning parties, and everywhere in the world have just lost a connection to the people, period. The Bharat Jodo Yatra, it may have done a million things. The one thing it did was reconnect at least one person in that party back to the people, right? So it's not, and the challenge is more on the movement side rather than the political side, because political parties cannot find ways to connect. The grassroots have to find a way to connect. And this is where the theological Hindu part comes in. And it is impossible to kind of pay homage to Gandhi without invoking the Bhagavad Gita. So, I mean, for those who don't know the Bhagavad Gita, I'll say in like 30 seconds. I mean, it basically is a battlefield, right? there's a gentleman by the name of Arjun. He has to fight his cousins to win his kingdom back. And the Lord Krishna is sitting with him and guiding him and telling him, you got to fight. And Arjun is like, no, I'm not going to fight. I can't fight my cousins, my uncles, etc., etc. So he says, give me an alternative path. Like, what can I do without fighting and seek salvation? And he says, okay, yeah, you can. There's a pathway towards salvation through knowledge. He's like, okay, what books do I need to read? He's like, well, you have to be ready to acquire that knowledge. You have to be devoted. You have to have devotion. It's like, okay, where do I go? Where do I pray and meditate? He's like, there's something even more fundamental. You have to do that. He's like, what do I have to do? He's like, you have to act. And he's like, there needs to be some kind of action. And he goes like, what kind of action? And he goes, the action that is for the welfare of the world. So it's called Lok Sangraha in the Bhagavad Gita. And that's it. So that's it. If we don't have action from the grassroots, I mean, we're going to be disconnected from people, and we'll have these intellectually, enjoyable discussions, but not more.